intern has a febrile infant that needs a lumbar puncture as part of the workup. The problem is, I just met the intern, the family just met the intern, and nobody really has any idea how competent this intern is to perform the LP in my busy ED ward or unit. It's a little nerve-wracking as a supervisor caring for this infant, and even more nerve-wracking for the family. And one solution is to perform the competency assessment using the LP mannequin to assess the intern's skill.
This global skills assessment allows any supervisor to appropriately rate the intern's performance on the simulated LP on a 4-point scale. And what we found was that the performance on the infant LP simulator had an incredible predictive ability on if they were going to succeed on the clinical LP or not. And in fact, if a trainee scores on either of the bottom two ratings of novice or beginner, that portended a poor success rate on your actual clinical infant LP. This is in contrast to those trainees who were competent and proficient, who had close to published rates of first-time infant LP success rates of about 45 to 55%.
To conduct a brief competency assessment, ask the trainee to perform a lumbar puncture procedure on the mannequin to the best of their ability, using the resources available at your institution and the lumbar puncture kit that they're familiar with. While they perform the procedure, be sure not to offer them any guidance or teaching, as this is an assessment. The procedure is finished once they have obtained CSF from the mannequin, or they can't complete the procedure. If you rated the trainee as competent or proficient, then essentially the trainee passes, and they have a fairly good chance of succeeding at the clinical LP with supervision. On the other hand, if you rated the trainee as a novice or a beginner, this means that they are not ready to try the procedure that day, and are very likely to fail even with your supervision. You may wish to do training with them on the simulator, and then reassess them later in the day. However, if there's not time for this during a clinical shift, we recommend you defer their experience for another date and time until they have had time for practice.
We've found through qualitative interviews that performing competency assessments appropriately and denying clinical lumbar punctures to poorly performing interns is sometimes a very new and even shocking idea. And as proponents for competency assessments and patient safety, we realize that not every supervisor has had experience in saying no to a trainee.
And this is where a new training cultural shift has to begin with our trainee supervisors. We are no longer in the see one, do one, teach one era, and based on our research, novices and beginner performances predict that the trainee will more likely harm one than do one. We want the trainee to succeed and maximize the safety of the patient.
I think it's so important to set the internal trainee to succeed at the procedure in every way possible without patient harm. So by using a regimented assessment on the simulator and practicing until the assessment comes routine, it's still win-win in the long run.
So to summarize, the use of the infant LP competency assessment tool can predict the trainee's actual infant LP success rate and their competency. And those who score as novice or beginner have a much higher chance of harming the patient. And so these poorly performing trainees should continue to practice on the simulator until they reach a competent or proficient level.